kick off then. So, welcome to this edition of the Q-Cast with me, Steve Q, and today I am delighted to be joined by Wendy Harris, who is a friend of mine from LinkedIn, and Wendy runs a very successful telemarketing agency called Make Conversations Count, or WAG Associates here, as I see on your website, which I've got up on my tablet. So welcome, Wendy. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for the invitation, Steve. It's lovely to be here.
It's my pleasure. Yes, it is lovely, isn't it? It's good to have a natter, which is what people like you and I are all about. And
yes.
And tell me, so we know each other from LinkedIn, which is, you know, I found this with LinkedIn that I have made a few sort of friends, or, you know, let's call them LinkedIn colleagues or associates who I've spoken to like this and had telephones calls with. I've never got that from Facebook. I've had loads of interactions with people on Facebook, you know, for potential business or social events. And the minute you throw a phone number out or say, let's meet on Zoom, they dry up and disappear. Have you experienced that at all?
It's definitely two different worlds of social, isn't it? The difference between LinkedIn and Facebook. And I think the separation comes, you know, certainly my own experience of using Facebook to start with was to keep in touch with friends and family.
Yeah.
You know, now I've got such an extended list of friends, and some of those people that I don't know, that because they're just interested in what I do. Yet with places like LinkedIn, of course, it's a business platform. It's where we hang out, and it's acceptable to be able to hang out there, I think, as well.
Yeah. I agree. I think actually, you know, I've been keeping my Facebook activity and browsing to a minimum recently as well, because I find that there's far less on LinkedIn. There's far less opinionated toxicity. Do you know what I mean? It's far, as you say, it's business. So. And most people, thank goodness, generally just keep it to business as well, with, you know, a bit of humour and context. Do you find the same?
I do. I think Facebook I find quite overwhelming sometimes. Whereas certainly on LinkedIn, people are a bit more focused. They have a purpose to be there. And on Facebook, there's far too many opinions, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it was Earl Nightingale said opinions are the cheapest commodities in the world. And my goodness, you don't half see in these days of social media that everybody's full of them, and they're just dying to regurgitate them on anyone who will listen or read, you know. So
it's a two-way street, though, isn't it? You know, you've got to be able to see the opposing argument as well as to where that opinion was formed. Yeah,
you do. But I take the I understand what you mean by that. Oh, it can be overwhelming on Facebook. It can be emotionally overwhelming. And my goodness, here's a bloke talking about emotions. But yeah, it can be. It can be. So conversations count. Then is your sort of hook or ID on LinkedIn. Tell us about conversations count, Wendy. Called you Wembley then.
Do you know what? A year ago today, I was at Wembley. I was waiting to see Pink come on stage. So you're meant to say that. Making conversations count is just sort of, it's something that a few people have said in jest when I've struggled to explain what I do. And when it comes to telemarketing and cold calling, a lot of people say, oh, that's nice. Which basically means that they don't want to talk to you anymore because you're that person that interrupts when they're bathing the kids or getting the dinner ready, and they don't see the value of, you know, having a new idea or product or service being shown to them, and it's very much a business-led thing that I do. And people don't always know how to start that conversation. So that's where I help with my Making Conversations Count training program.
Okay.
And helping them to realize that the purpose of having the conversation is to help the person that you're talking to, which in turn will help you in your own business, because it's a matched conversation, and you can be natural without being salesy and pushy.
Yeah.
So that's what it all is all about.
It was interesting actually, but you start by talking about cold calling, because I was in made a few comments and had a few interactions in somebody else's feed on LinkedIn, someone who's very successful on LinkedIn, who's in a not dissimilar space to ours, a guy called Daniel Disney from the Daily Sales. And he did a smart thing last week, is he put a poll out, which I'm going to start doing actually, on LinkedIn. And he said, is cold calling dead? Yes or no? I don't know whether you saw that.
I did. I voted. No, it's not.
It's definitely not. It's just different, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's like lots of things. It goes in cycles. I mean, I don't know about how long you've been into the cold calling and the sales calling.
I'll tell you in a minute.
But I started in 1988, so that's over 30 years ago. Fax machines were a new thing, very early on in my career. I've seen email come along. I've seen social media explode. So of course it's just what's fashionable, and in today's climate, I would say less cold calling, more warm calling, but there's a good way of doing it, springboarding from social media platforms.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, if I may, I'll tell you, when I started cold calling, I was about 14. So that would have been about like 1979 or something. And what we had it wasn't a family friend. I usually say it was a family friend because it's too long to talk about, but I had a part-time job when I was a kid. Did you have a Saturday job?
I worked the markets from 13.
Well, I worked the markets as well, but I worked the fish market. Yeah, so I had the cats following me home, But so it was the people that I worked for, their son was considerably older than me, had a family and all, and he was an insurance broker for General Insurance. And I was round at Mary's one day after the markets having a cup of tea, and that was his mum, and he said to me, you speak quite well. Do you fancy doing a bit of calling work for me a couple of nights of the week? I'll pick you up from home and come in the office. And literally, I got a phone book, a telephone directory. It started at A, and I would call people up and say where I was from, and find out when their motor insurance, their home contents insurance, and all was renewable, and could we give you a call a week before to give you perhaps a better quote than you're currently getting? Would you be open to that? Yeah. And so that was my first sort of foray into the world of telesales, telemarketing, cold calling at that age. Yeah. So it was very different. And I remember the Amstrad do you remember the Amstrad fax machine, telephone answering machine, and phone all in one thing?
When you could do it all at once, my goodness, you'd really made it in your office to have one of those.
That was the machine to have, wasn't it? And I think I started using email in round about 87, 88. We had an internal email. I worked for a life and pensions company called Target Life. And we had email back then, but no one hardly used it. It was you had to go and crank the computer up in a special group.
Yeah. It's all very bespoke systems then. I remember record cards and having a metal framed side addition to my desk where all those record cards would go, and you'd file them in a particular way and pull them out so you'd know exactly when to be ringing the next one, and you'd have a different section for those customers that haven't bought from you yet that you're following up for the salesman. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned Yellow Pages. I mean, LinkedIn is now effectively, it's our Yellow Pages.
In a way,
and my success was always starting at Z, never A.
Working backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because most salespeople, or anybody in that kind of role, because let's face it, it can be quite a tough environment. Not many people stick at it for long periods of time. You know, they'd all done A, B, and C, so you get to sort of F and G, and it's all virgin territory.
Yeah.
Start at the back.
I know. I get it. It was just a few years later from that. I think I'd be about 18 or 19. I had my first job in financial services, and that was knocking on doors on let's just say the less salubrious council estates in South Yorkshire. You know, flogging life policies and savings plans. So you can imagine the two words that I heard most.
Yes.
I'll give you a clue. They weren't.
It wasn't how much.
It wasn't come in. So what as a professional, you know, telesales, communications person, predominantly over the telephone for 30 some years, as you said, what do you think constitutes a really good either sales or customer service conversation, Wendy?
Oh, well, I suppose if it's your first time of speaking, it's about finding out about their situation first.
Yeah.
You know, you don't go straight into, you know, oh, I'm Wendy and I'm from Wagon, I'm a fantastic trainer and I've done this, and this, because already they're yawning at, you know, how wonderful you are. Are you going to let me speak? So I think it's always good to find out what they're already doing, you know, because let's face it, most people have got something in place. Maybe not as good as they could, because, you know, it depends how long they've had it, how long ago it was that they looked into it and put it in. So it would have been the best at the time. So it's about, I think, being able to sort of understand where they are with things, what their plans are going to be, so that you can then say, well, that's great, because I think at some point way down there we can help you because this is what we do. But so it's about positioning and timing, I think, are the two key things to a good conversation.
And obviously doing that fact find, it's like that old saying, isn't it? You know, seek first to understand, you know, so you and I think from their perspective, it's there's a classic Zig Ziglar phrase which saying, and he said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so demonstrating by asking all these searching questions, paraphrasing the answers back to people, letting them know that we've understood, and maybe asking deeper, more penetrative questions, that you don't need to tell somebody that you care and that you're listening and that you're sincere and genuine when you do all that, do you?
Yeah, because it's all subliminal in what actions you're taking and the language that you're using. And I think it's also relevant to sort of say that, you know, when you're talking to somebody, you know, I mean, I've worked for some very high ticket, long contracts. So you could be talking 30, 40, 50,000 pound capex, or contracts that are going to last 7 years. You know, so by asking them if, you know, and if you're talking something like a computer system network or a telephone system network, or your copiers, any kind of, you know, IT or something that you rely on in the office, if you were to say to them, how long have you had that? if they've only had it 12 months, it's unlikely that they're going to be on that purchasing journey now for a good few years.
Yeah. Of course.
So if you say, well, if you've only had it for 12 months, then I can come back to you nearer the time.
Yeah.
So it's about understanding when that time is going to be. And people appreciate you not taking up their time with that.
Yeah.
Well.
I think so. So my next question, I made a list of things that I definitely wanted to get, so I wouldn't forget them. And I wanted to know your view on phone v social as a sales tool.
Do you know, I think they work hand in hand. I really do. It's clear that there are certain people that have embraced social, and you can connect with them on LinkedIn and you can start the conversation online. So, even through my training, I'm helping people start that conversation online with a view of making it a phone call or a Zoom call now, warming it up.
Yeah.
But then there's also companies that you'll really have seen in your target demographic that haven't embraced social yet.
Yeah.
That staff don't use social yet. So, of course, you've got to revert to some of the more old-fashioned techniques and pick up the phone to reach them.
Yeah. It's just that there is a certain societal demographic who are like really and I suppose they're post millennials veer towards more towards social. So there are some people that they wouldn't dream of picking the phone up to initiate or even maybe even to close business. They just expect it to be done with an exchange of typing and so on, and perhaps even an email, and that's as personal as it gets. But I've always, again, being a product of the 80s or whatever, when we only did have it was, there wasn't all the negativity around cold calling. There wasn't all the consumer programs that say to people, beware of anybody cold calling because it's probably a scam. So I've always and I still find that in a phone call you can get humor, you can get contextual accuracy, you can get a lot more feeling and intuition, and you can see the nuance which you can't in messages. And I'm also lazy. I just prefer to talk as well.
No, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I mean, last week I was only teaching a few people who were, and I think it's a generation thing. That I would much rather pick up the phone because I can get the task done. Rather than email a question to wait for that answer that is going to lead to another question, to another email, to another bounce. And of course, all of this happens while time goes on because people are doing other stuff. They're not just sitting and waiting for your email. So a minute conversation with those three questions, it's done. It's sorted.
It's quicker, isn't it?
But you can send voice messages now, can't you? I mean, something that I enjoy doing on LinkedIn is sending a voice message rather than typing one, because you can't. It can be misunderstood sometimes, the intention behind things.
I think sometimes things can be misunderstood, and that's a good word, the intention. Because you haven't got the context. So if the context isn't clear, nor is the intention sometimes, not always, but sometimes. So I think we probably both agree the phone's still and this is something that Daniel Disney talks about a lot, because obviously he made his name on LinkedIn and has got, 350, 400,000 followers from this phrase social selling. And I was a little bit like that at first when I first saw it, but he doesn't mean solely social selling. He's when I've seen him speak and read his posts, he's an advocate of using the phone, but using, as you said earlier, these new tools that we've got called social media, just in the way that we sent somebody a fax sometimes and then called them, or then email at first. It's just another string to the bow, isn't it, in terms of communication? But I think ultimately to build a worthwhile long-term relationship or sell any high-ticket items, you've got to get face-to-face or on the phone at least, haven't you, to sell?
It's to me, it's the human connection. So it's the human side of things where we go back to that people buy off people.
Yeah.
We go back to the fact that you know, when it's humanized, I don't know, you give something of yourself, don't you, when you're selling?
Yeah.
We all need to have adverts, but it's the personality that comes through, I think.
Yeah.
Daniel does that with a lot of humor, I've noticed, you know, and that's what people love, is that, you know, you can show that you've got a sense of humor in business. You don't have to, I mean look, I'm in my branded colors, but I'm fairly casual.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean to say that but it doesn't mean to say that I don't take what I do deadly serious.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the point with this social selling, is that it's a route to market, like you say. It's just another tool.
Yeah, another tool. Yeah. So I've got a question here, mainly for, I'm interested, obviously, but for anybody who finds themselves watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube, how would you define your mainstream service?
My mainstream service. So,
okay, let me break that down. So as far as I can see from looking at your website, you've got two primary services, yeah, that run side by side. You've got the telephone, the actual service where you will front, where you'll do customer service or sales or pre-sales or prospecting on behalf of organizations, so as like an outsourced service. And then you've got a training program that you provide for people who are maybe doing that for themselves, or it could be for those same clients who want to evolve and train their staff into doing what you've done for them initially on a campaign, you know, ad infinitum for the long term. So how would you define both of those things? That's if I've read it right.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, I do less and less of the actual telephone campaigning because the training is the main focus now.
Okay.
And I think it's important to be able to show people how to use the social side of things, yes, to feed the phone calls. Yeah. You know, not to just rely on any one particular form of marketing. That's the key thing. So the training program is the same whether it's for a team or whether it's for an individual, and it is just purely putting into practice how I would work on a telephone campaign. Yeah. And it's what's been successful for me running WAG for 15 years. Yeah. So I just show them how I do it, and we work on how they can do it best for them.
I mean, yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's one of the things about what training should be. I mean, like if you're familiar with any sort of NLP techniques, one of the primary techniques in NLP is modeling, yeah, where you want to achieve a certain result. So you go out and find somebody who's achieved a similar result and you model their behavior, and you should get, you know, a similar result to the one that they got, which is the one that you're trying to model, because you want the same sort of thing for yourself or for your business. So going to somebody like you who's been doing it, I know with this business 15 years, but all in all over 30 years, if you want that, it's experiential, isn't it? It's got depth and breadth. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of people I've found in training, and no disrespect to them, because everybody's got to start somewhere, but there's a lot of people who have done a career change or done a 180. They've read a book, they've been on a course, and now they're the go-to expert, but they don't have that depth and breadth. Do you know where I'm coming from with that?
I do, yeah. Yeah, I mean, at 19, I'd been in my account management role for 2 years. Yeah. And I was the national account manager.
Yeah.
I didn't have a territory salesman on one area, and they didn't need one.
Sure.
It was.
What industry was that in, Wendy?
That was in vending.
Okay.
So consumables and supplies in catering and hospitality. So if you bought coffee, you had to buy tea and sugar, you had to buy the napkins, you had to buy the black bags to put your rubbish in, you know. So the cross-selling and upselling and the groundwork that went into that, into, you know, there was thousands and thousands of product lines. You had to know what those product lines were, but you had to also understand the environment that you were calling to be able to identify that opportunity. So you were just matchmaking, you know, and that's the same now when you're looking at any kind of training. Is, you know, look for the ideal purpose. And I will always say, you know, to any customer, so who's the customer that you enjoy working with the most at the moment? Then who's the customer that makes you the most money by working with them? Right, now look at what you do for those two customers, and you're looking for a happy marriage of the both.
I mean, obviously you're looking to make the composite of those two customers, I guess. You're looking to make them an avatar for your future prospects who don't know about you yet, yeah?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
So then it comes to telling the stories and sharing the content, which is kind of why we have like video chats, and we have YouTube channel, and we want to be telling stories, and we ask our customers to give us social proof.
Yes.
How did you find the experience? So all of these things, no matter, you know, I think we're getting more savvy as well in that people are using experts in different areas to represent the business in terms of the written word and building websites and, you know, all of this representation. That there's one thing that there's two things that they can't take away from you, and that is how you sound on the phone because you believe what you do. And what people are saying about you in your reviews online.
You've got some great testimonials on your website.
I've got some fantastic customers.
They clearly think a lot of you. So tell me, what that was in the catering, vending, tea and coffee industry. What other over your years of experience doing this type of work, what other industries have you worked in?
Gosh,
what does the cross-section look like?
It's quite diverse.
Telecoms,
IT, and that can be IT support, copiers. So I quite like tech. I find that whatever's going on in that marketplace actually has a bearing on us in the real world. I mean, just look at how Zoom has saved our lives at the moment. So there's that. I've worked for creative design agencies, so I love, you know, asking people why they don't think, you know, that they're reaching the right customers, because it can be visual as well. So sometimes it can be that they don't like the look of you, so how do you look great as well? My favourite story is the magician, and he was, you know, up there in the magic circle. He'd won one year top magician, and he said, look, you know, there's not much money in magic unless you make it, you know. He said, so I need something to earn money, and but I don't know who to be in touch with. Perhaps you can help me. And I said, well, what about actually doing magic tricks for business? And he said, well, how would that work? And it was like, well, there's lots of exhibitions that go on, and when you go to these exhibitions, it's the something that catches your eye that makes you walk towards that stand, you know, whether it's the best raffle prize where you give your business card away for. I said, if you were doing magic on the front of the stand, you know, getting people to come and have a look, that could work. So I said, let's have a look. So we had a look online. This was about 10 years ago, I estimate.
Okay.
And he was local to me, and I'm in the Midlands. So the NEC is the nearest to us.
Sure.
So we went straight to the NEC website and we looked to see what business conferences and stuff were coming up. And there was an optical conference coming up. And it was the International Optical Conference.
The big one.
And I was like, that's in 3 months' time, so they're still going to be planning. They're in the planning stage. I said, can you imagine? They're not going to believe their eyes. And that was it. We knew we had a hook to ring off the people that were going to be exhibiting, because the list was there for us. And I literally spent about 3 hours on the phone, just ringing round. Have you got anything sorted? You know, he won a 3-day pitch on the stand. He was then asked to do a special performance at the end of conference dinner with all the bigwigs. And from all the people that he met by attending the conference, he was booked out with enough work that he was happy then for the next 18 months.
Wow. Wow.
You know? So you go from that.
That's
to,
a shift, isn't it?
Yeah. So he's kind of like made up, can do private parties and things like that to all of the you know, the business owners who he's meeting in these places. So he was very well networked up just from that one morning's work. And then you go to the other extreme of, Wendy, I'm relaunching our corporate finance. I need you to get in touch with all of our customers, everybody that's on our book. And we need to do it in a quick and timely manner. And I want you to just let them know that the name of the company is going to change and this is the contact details. And that very quickly turned into, how many people have you got to contact? About 12,000.
Wow.
Okay, well, and how quick do you need this done? Within a month. There was no way on earth I was going to be able to do that. So that was where the Associates was born. And I ended up with an 8-strong team ringing around for this corporate finance house. And I was like saying to them, well, we don't just want to let them know that you've changed your name. If you've not been in touch with them for such a long time, we need to qualify them. So how much business are they doing on corporate finance? What's the best method for them to be kept in touch with? If they're doing over a certain level of business, is that the salesman? Is that somebody internally? So by understanding account management and the new business side of things and owning a business, we very quickly took that to booking appointments. So that period of time that they just wanted to ring round, we cleansed the data, we got them a broad picture of where everybody was, all the people that had gone out of business, the people that had bought other businesses, people are the movers and shakers, and they potentially had something like £50 million worth of potential business just on the appointments that we got.
Wow.
Let alone identifying what category of business they were in.
I mean, that's fantastic, but it's a broad spectrum. You know, you've got the initial sale, and then you've got account management, as you said, and I would put very, very closely related to account management, and then sometimes it can be the same thing as customer service, yeah? Because if you keep in touch with people and ask them how it's going, and you, obviously it's very easy to keep in touch with people now with emails, but you know, the odd phone call here and there, not so you become in a pain, but you know, you strike a happy balance, because oftentimes I've known salespeople who have missed out on an opportunity just because they didn't keep in touch. So they thought, oh, well, they're not bothered about me anymore. And a competitor, you've always got to be aware that the business that you're doing with someone or did with somebody recently, somebody else is looking to encroach on that, vying for the territory. It's called a competitor, yeah? So if you build that strong relationship, and you know, the converse of what I just said is, I've known people that or businesses, no matter what deal you offer them, no matter you offer it with bells and a cherry and whipped cream on top, they won't shift from their existing supplier because they've got that relationship with them and they trust them.
it reinforces loyalty. And we're in such a fast-paced society. If there's anything we want, it's all at our fingertips. We only have to type it in, and we can
instant gratification, isn't it?
Yes, so we can find anything we want from anybody, but certainly at the beginning of lockdown, my customers on my telephone campaigns, rightly so, had to go into survival mode, and they're still just building to that point of thrive. Let's get back to thrive.
Yeah.
And the only advice I could ever give them then was, look, you won't have me getting on the phone to the people that we've pipelined, but anybody that's your customer, make sure you're in touch with them. And I don't mean a MailChimp. I mean a phone call. Yeah. Anybody that you've maybe nearly done business with, drop them a phone call in, as much as anything, to let them know that you haven't gone out of business.
Yeah.
That you're still here for them if who they went with has.
Yeah. We'll talk about that lockdown thing in a moment. I don't want to dwell on it, but I want to touch on it. But I tell you something, the importance of keeping in touch. And this is like a little throwaway for anyone who's watching. But it's a personal story of mine. So in the 90s, there was a particular deal that I was in, but I was a salesman and sales manager for, and we had a guy he was basically a tire kicker, time waster, my boss thought, but it turned out the guy was doing by taking advantage of our inspection visit, which involved a flight, so it wasn't cheap, it was a high ticket item. The guy actually fessed up to me that he was doing a recce because he was looking at starting a similar business with a colleague. Yeah. So and he said to me, but next time you're in London, he said, do drop in and see me. Keep my number. This is my address in Mayfair, just behind the Dorchester. Yeah. And he said, I'll take you for lunch, and I hope there's no hard feelings. So at that point, I could have gone one of two ways, Wendy. I could have screwed the guy's name and number up, thrown it in the bin, said something rude about him, and never thought of him again as a time waster, moaned about him in the pub that night, or I just thought, no, I'll do that, because I do look at the bigger picture. And a few months later, I did get in touch with him. I did have lunch with him. Long story short, I moved to London permanently not long after, and he gave me an office and an apartment free of charge for the first year in his building in South Audley Street in Mayfair. I mean, I used to see Camilla Parker Bowles walking past all the time, people like that. And then the second year, he said to me in a jocular fashion one time, he said, my wife's getting, he was very wealthy, this guy, very, very, very wealthy. He said, my wife is asking me about, is Stephen paying any rent? He said, so you need to make me an offer. I said, well, goodness me. I said, the prices round here, so I don't really think I'll be able to afford to stay here. 100 quid? And I'm thinking, 100 quid a week. And it's probably like 1,000 a week then or more, So he smiled. He said, have you got cash on you? I said, yeah. He said, well, give me 100 quid. And he said, I'll expect the same this time next month and every month on. So it was 100 quid a month he took from me. So for 12, I was there 2 years. I had 2 years living and working in Mayfair for 1,200 quid.
But it goes to show, doesn't it, that money was of a different value to him.
Big time.
And for you, and I'm the same. I won't burn any bridges.
No,
you
because
you never know.
And we became good friends, and he introduced me to a lot of his friends, and you can imagine what they were like. None of them were skint members. Apart from me. So who are your typical clients at the moment, Wendy, just to give people an idea?
At the moment, typical clients tend to be owner-managed businesses that are really they've had to change a lot of what they're doing, so they're looking for a little bit of extra support in terms of making sure that their offering is tight and how they're offering it, and how to build their audience and speak to their audience. But equally, some of the bigger businesses as well, you know, it can be working for a deep cleaning company that are offering sanitisation and decontamination services.
Yeah.
The same that's used in number 10, but apparently number 10 adopted it after Boris was poorly.
Okay.
So it's still diverse. I mean, I've still got a creative design agency that I'm working for. I've still got a consultant who's offering mental health training in the construction industry, because the construction industry is poorly under-resourced.
Okay.
Telecoms company, you know, it's quite diverse. It's a bit like Wurzel Gummidge.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. So here's a question for you. As regards this type of work and the phone and people's manner on the phone when people call you, when you get cold called, yeah, let's say, what are your pet hates?
They usually get my name wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I got
what
married.
Do they call you?
Well, I mean, a couple of days ago, I had on Friday it was, hello, is that Stephen? Do I sound like Stephen?
Yeah.
I mean, so,
don't sound anything like me.
But I mean, I got married over 6 years ago. So if anybody that is doing any groundwork and is looking at a business, do your homework, you know.
Yeah.
Make sure it's up to date, because I made sure that I changed all of my details somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so I think you've got to address the person properly. That's a real pet hate. And it's when they go, just want to take 2 minutes of your time. Well, you know it's not going to be 2 minutes of your time.
Yeah.
And you haven't even told me what it's about yet.
Yeah.
So you're asking for commitment. What for?
Yeah, I get it. I always use that. So I would always call somebody. I don't know what your thoughts are on this. So it would be, hello, may I speak with Mrs. Harris, where I call in you, and we didn't know one another. And then I would at some point say, is it okay to call you Wendy, or do you prefer I keep it a bit more? And 99% of the time people say, yeah, call me when, you know, call me whatever, I've been called worse, you know. And I learned that lesson a long time ago. I think before I was 20, when I did use somebody's first name on the phone and I got the wrong person, or I got that person on the wrong day, and he bit my head off and told me, you know, what right, you don't know me, what right have you got to call me, you know, like this, impromptu, and start using my Christian name, etc. So that one kind of stuck with me. Yeah,
I think it's different as well, because your background is very much sort of business to consumer with the finance side of things as well.
Yeah.
So you're likely to be ringing personal telephone numbers and people at home.
Yeah, we were.
So that's a different rule for the B2C market than a B2B market, because you're calling on equal terms to some degree. You know, you're somebody in your business, they're somebody in their business.
Yeah.
You would just confirm their whole name, and then you would continue to use their first name. That's a general rule of thumb. I haven't needed to confirm whether I could call them by their first name for a long time, but then that was when I used to work for Lloyds TSB. So
yeah, well, I mean, old habits die hard, don't they? You know, you get into, so it becomes second nature. Here's a question: why do you think that today? I mean, I'll take you back. When I was a kid growing up in the 1970s, we had a dial phone. It was on the wall in the hallway. Yeah.
Did it have a lock?
Sorry?
Did it have a lock?
It did after I got into using it. Yeah. But then I found that you could tap on the top. You could tap the numbers out on the top. But yeah, my father would answer it in a certain way, which was just his surname, and then he'd say speaking, so he'd go Quayle speaking, and my mother would answer it in a very, my mother reminded me of, what's her name, Hyacinth Bouquet, because she was GPO trained. I think that's where I got the phone thing from. She was really into the phone. She'd been a phone operator, so she would always answer with our number, but she'd just pick it up and say 366 450, which was our telephone number. It doesn't exist anymore, that number. But you couldn't see who was calling, and it was the phone was ringing. Will somebody answer it, please? Yeah. Now, you know, you go to a coffee shop or something, you see someone's phone ring, a couple, and you can see they're looking at the phone and they go, do you recognize that number? And people go, oh, I wonder who it is. Or, I mean, and God forbid it's a private number, withheld number, I'm not answering that. People have got this phonophobia nowadays, you know, long after caller ID was, what do you think about that?
You've just made me tickle, really, because my best friend still to this day answers the phone. Yes, hello, as if to say, who are you? What do you want?
Yeah.
That's her polite way. So I always go, oh, hello, it's Wendy.
Yeah. It's funny though, isn't it?
It is strange, because certainly for me, the whole point of the phone for me was that I was in control on the phone, because you couldn't see me. I've really, really missed using the phone over the last few months, because Zoom is the kind of the new thing. Oh no, let's Zoom. You know, I could be on the phone working campaigns, and I could clear my email, I could keep up with my social media, I could make notes, I could check things off, because the times that you're waiting to be put through and connected, that downtime, that's when you would do it.
Yeah.
You would find the time to do those tasks later. And of course, I don't know whether you're the same, Steve, but my left ear is a finely tuned instrument to BS. You know, I can tell if somebody's telling the truth or not.
Yeah.
So I embrace the phone. At work, let's see who this is. Let's see if I can tell them that they need to do a better job of ringing me. Yet at home, I don't want to answer the phone. And I do find it's a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it? That we're attached to our phones constantly and we don't want to answer it.
It's weird, isn't it? You know, as I just always say to people, you know, take the call, because you know what, it might be somebody with something interesting. Yeah, could be just a friend who's changed their number, you know, not let you know yet. If it's a sales call, this is another one I get from people. They'll go, yeah, but it might be a sales call. So what? You might want to buy whatever they're selling. And if you know, give them a minute. And if they pee you off or you're not interested, say goodbye. I've got a friend I said this to, and I noticed what he does. Is you got persistent salesperson on the other end of the phone, and he said, look, I'm not that bothered, I've got to go. So the salesperson, quite rightly, is going, yeah, but you know, and he can't just press that red button. So I think the clue is, you know, if somebody is overstaying the welcome, to say, look, I've really got to go now. Thank you so much for your call. I appreciate your time. I'm not bothered. And just hit the red button. Don't wait for them to actually say, it's okay for you to go, Wendy. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, you don't need to do that, you know. And then if they're really rude and annoying, you can give them 2 words of a sort as well, you know, if you want. it's an opportunity for that as well.
There's got to be an opportunity. You've got to see answering the phone as an opportunity for you.
I think so, yeah.
And if it's not an opportunity, then it's still an opportunity to say, look, I'm really never going to be interested, so please remove me from your list.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, I mean, one of the things that I teach people is don't ring somebody. If it goes to answer phone or voicemail, don't not leave a message, because in actual fact, the next time you try again, you're that persistent salesperson that doesn't want to say that you're a salesperson.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to be doubly ignored, if not blocked. So, you know, leave a friend, like we were saying before at the beginning, leave a friendly message. One that's not overbearing, one that says it's really not important. I'd just like to introduce something to you. That comes across as, oh, actually, when she rings back, then I might answer the call now because I know what it's about. Doesn't feel threatening. Yeah.
I tell you something which is interesting. I'd love to hear your view on this. This is like a latter-day cultural thing. And I've got my view or perspective on it, but I'd like to hear yours. So I'm often been in, and there's a particular, I won't mention the name, but it's a national mobile phone retailer. And I've often been in there or in other shops over the last few years. And whether I'm the one who's being served or whether there's somebody in front of me, you've got one person behind the counter. And then on the shelf behind the counter, you know, where the racks of accessories are, whatever, there's another counter, and the phone's ringing, and they just ignore it, and it rings and rings and rings until it stops, and then it might ring again, and they just ignore it. They don't go. Now, back in the day, so I would always go, excuse me, just 1 second. Oh yeah, who's it? Oh, Mrs. Harris. Yeah, I'll call you back. I'm just with a customer in 5 minutes. Because guess what? Mrs. Harris might want to be spending $1,000 or 10 grand, but I've just ignored her. And what do you think of that?
No, I agree. We were taught 3 rings. You need to get to it within 3 rings, you know. And I think they
must be trained. The thing is, they must be trained.
Yes.
Somebody who trains those people before they go on the shop call must be saying to them, right, Wendy, if you're serving a customer at the counter and the phone rings, ignore it.
Do you know what, Steve? I think
that to them.
I think they're not actually being trained. They don't know what to do. They're taught one task at a time. If you're free to answer the phone, you answer the phone, you deal with it. If a customer walks in and you're free, you deal with the customer. They are not taught to know what to do if both happens at the same time. They can't be, because there would be nobody in their right mind would allow an opportunity to be missed.
But they're not in the right minds if their common sense doesn't dictate that to them. I mean, it doesn't take Einstein to work out that could be a paying customer for either one deal or multiple deals on the other end of the phone. That's revenue into this business. This business depends on revenue to pay my wages so that I'm not on the dole.
Now you see, you're trying to get the employee to think like the employer. That's hard. But what I would say is that, you know, some of it comes down to manners, I think, and our expectations on how we are treated.
Yeah.
So long as, if I was at the counter being served, right, or the next in line to be served, I would be quite happy if the customer service person said to me, please just give me a moment, I just must answer that phone and I will call them back and I'll get to you. That my expectations are managed, that I'm still next in line, because in actual fact, you know, nobody wants to hear a ringing phone. So what I would say is, to anybody listening, Steve and Wendy are available for training your staff how to multitask and not miss an opportunity.
Yeah. it's crazy though, isn't it? You know, but I just wondered, I tell you what I wondered was if they are trained, because presumably, you know, national companies have a training program before they let you loose. I wonder if they're trained that it's a rude and offensive thing to answer the phone and not give that person who you're already serving at the counter your absolute 110% undivided attention, you know, to the exclusion of anything else. I wondered if that was the mantra behind the scenes.
It could be that some of the training gets dissipated over time.
Yeah.
Focus of priorities gets lost.
Yeah.
And maybe the company itself doesn't realize that it's happening.
Yeah.
Or they would do something about it. So if customers are not saying, well, I went into the shop and I was quite happy with the trainers I bought, or I was quite happy with them upgrading my phone, but I didn't like the phone ringing in the background.
Yeah.
Are people feeding it back to the company? Yeah. Are the staff saying to their managers or bosses, look, yeah, we had quite a good day today, but the phone was ringing off the hook and couldn't get to it. Is there enough people managing? It's that upturn and downturn, you know, so there's the reports and there's processes and things that they can do to project manage all of these things, isn't there? You know, it really doesn't need to be happening.
Yeah, I agree, but I think, you know, I think it really comes down to just common sense. There's I don't know whether in your part of the world, but where I'm from, in Yorkshire originally, there's a saying, a word called nous, yeah, which it means common sense. Use your noggin, use your nous, yeah. And I think people's common sense, as use a word you used a minute ago, has dissipated, or people have been dumbed down over the years. You know, an example of that I always use, you go into a pub on a Friday or Thursday evening, order a pint of lager, the kid behind the bar is probably going to sell thousands of those over the weekend, yeah, and has been doing for his tenure to date there. And you put your hand in your pocket, you know, especially us guys, you got a load of shrapnel in the arse pocket of your jeans. So you say, oh, how much is that, mate? I want to get rid of this change, yeah? And he doesn't know. He doesn't know how much, yet he sells thousands of them. He's got to go, oh, hang on, ooh. And he pressed, and he goes, £3.87.
Yeah.
You don't know. You know, and that to me is a dissipation of people's common sense or nous, or just, you know, when I worked in a bar many moons ago, I knew the people's names. I got to know people's names. And if I was pouring a gin and tonic for one person and John, the truck driver, came in, I'd switch the bitter pump on, you know, could actually do two things at once. It's amazing. And that's another thing. Nowadays, they never serve two people at the same time.
No, and I think it's a conflict of initiative and responsibility.
Initiative,
because if you show initiative, you upset somebody somewhere along the line, and it can be the people that you're on the same level with. It can upset the manager for making the manager look daft. You know, I mean, I've heard somebody was telling me only last week that by doing such a good job, the CEO has seen, off the back of some advice that I was giving him just over a coffee, and saying, well, why don't you try this? And he put it into practice, and the CEO has seen it. Well, now his manager and his director are really unhappy with him because he's making them look daft. So, you know, he's took the initiative, but the responsibility lies with somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's them that's now upset.
Well, that to me is a very, very linear, stupid and narrow-minded way, and that's coming from a place that is coming. Those people who are above him are definitely coming from a place or a perspective of pride and ego, you know?
Self.
Because if that were me, I'd be saying, that's fantastic. So who's this Wendy Harris who you're talking? Maybe we should have let's have a meeting, let's have a Zoom call or get her in. Let's do a bit of brainstorming, seeing what the other areas we can improve, and praise and encourage the guy for taking the initiative, because that's what you want.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think too often like accountability and an audit of where this, you know, it's like people hiding behind emails now instead of picking up the phone.
Yeah.
Because, well, it's written down and I said this in an email. And so it's written there and I can prove it. You know, if you're any good and you've got recording on your phone, you've got that to prove it too. There's no excuse at all.
It's weird, isn't it? You know. So just going on to this before we conclude, because we've got more than an hour's gone by now. I'm having loads of fun. That's time flat. Have you noticed that? I call it time distortion when. It can be one of those things like when you do the school run, or if you can imagine how long it takes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you can feel that time. And then other times you might be on the hands-free or thinking about something and it's bang, the time's gone. Where did the time go? And that's because you're in a mild trance when you're enjoying yourself or thinking about. So I did say that we talk about the lockdown thing, but I want to talk about it from a positive perspective, the opportunities, because there's an old saying by, I forget who coined this phrase, but it's true. It said most good opportunities are preceded by crisis. Yeah, and there's an opportunity. There's a silver lining in every cloud. That's basically what that means. And so I was doing Zoom trainings long ago. The only thing was I was having to say to employers, "Oh, have you got Zoom?" They go, "No, what's Zoom?" I said, "Well," so I'd have to explain what Zoom is. And some of them say, "Oh, no, we've not got that. I'll have to check if it's okay to download that." Crazy stuff. But now everybody and his dog knows what Zoom is because of recent events. Yeah. And I just think it gives a tremendous opportunity for sort of upping team cohesion for those who are working remotely and getting people. You talked about mental health, bolstering people's confidence, because on the one hand, working from home, working remotely is great, isn't it? You can sit there in your boxer shorts or whatever, and if you're on the phone or on the computer, you can do that. You haven't got someone looking over your shoulder, but you need self-discipline and you need to not get down that you're on your own, because some people go to work partly for the camaraderie and the friendship. What's your view on all of that and the opportunities for remote working and Zoom and sort of increased phoning now as well as a result of recent events?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, being able to, you have got to be disciplined. There's no two ways about it. I mean, you're in my lovely Wagworks. This is my log cabin at the top of the garden. And the reason it works for me is because I leave the house. So I physically go to work.
Yeah.
Come up here to do the work. If it was in the house, there'd be too many distractions. So you've got to really put yourself into a space that you can work and set yourself up.
Yeah.
One, I think it's great for the environment. I think it gives you as a person time back that you weren't traveling. So if you're a salesman and you're on the road all the time, goodness me, you can time travel now, can't you? You know, you can hop from county to county online. So I think if the opportunity for me is that you'll spend your time smarter, because you'll be picking the conversations you really want to have.
Yeah.
And those outcomes, you know, your conversions ought to be better as well if you're being smarter about the conversations that you're having. And of course, then that compounds to that domino effect of it's working well, and and I'm doing great. So I'm quite happy to be working remote and be in this environment. Who wants to go back to the grind?
Well, it's like that. You know, there's a person I know who was working for a financial services company. They all got given a laptop and a login to a CRM system. Sales manager can see when they're online. If they go to the bathroom or go to make a cup of tea, they've got to press something on there. So that's reasonable time, 5 minutes or break. They've got to take their breaks all at the same time, just as if they were in the office. But where they've gained is they can pretty much wear what they want. Some of them don't have to spend an hour getting to work. They're saving money on public transport, stuff like that, or parking fees. And you know, when they start, they start. When they finish, they finish. It's as simple as that. And their company, after about a week, said it's working well, as you just said there. Please be aware, we're going to reevaluate the office situation, yeah, and we're going to speak to you about it, because 40-some people, city centre, that's probably 10, 15 grand a month in office costs, and that takes some making, as we both know, that they could be saving by having people work in a better environment, working at home.
If we're smart enough, I mean, this is kind of where we touching on the realms of politics a little bit, so I'm going to rephrase it into being community minded and how businesses can be community minded.
Yeah.
So by staying local, shopping local, working from home,
yeah,
there's going to be an awful lot of real estate being reevaluated.
Oh, for sure.
Yet there's lots of talk of shortages, house shortages, you know. So I do foresee an awful lot of savings to be made for corporations.
Yeah.
Turn that into something for social housing that solves a problem.
Yeah.
You know, and of course then you're safeguarding jobs as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. But to be honest, you know, they've been talking about a housing shortage in this country since the 1980s, haven't they? You know, there's always there isn't any shortage of land, really. You know, I've got to ask you this question. Let's make this the last question. What's the Wendy Harris conversations count? It's a second to last question. What's your take on getting past the gatekeeper? I couldn't leave that one out. I mean, this is a telesales, telemarketing conversation. I'd be an absolute muppet if I left that out. What's your preferred method for getting past the gatekeeper on a B2B call?
I ask them for their help. Simple as that. You know, they are my aunt and uncle who have a responsibility to do their job, but if I'm going to ask nicely, can you please help me, you know, and it's about being a little bit smart and savvy. I try not to ask outright cold, who do I need to speak to? Because I mean, you can do your homework, other people do, why don't you? So I tend to just say, can you help me? I'm not quite sure if it's still Ed or Sarah that looks after this for you. And they'll go, oh yeah, of course. Or oh no, they've moved on now. So I ask for help. Simple as that.
That's great. I got taught years ago, it might have even been Brian Tracy at one of his seminars.
Oh, there's a name I haven't heard for a while.
Yeah, well, I've met him a few times. I've been to his seminars in Holland and a few of them in the UK as well when he was traveling over here. But he said, always ask somebody for help. And he contextualized it by saying, imagine you're walking down the street and somebody comes up to you and says, excuse me, could you help me? And then imagine the times you've done that with people as well. And most people, and he said, unless you get a real so-and-so, a real horrible sod, most people will respond to that in a positive way by, if you ask, can you help? And the other thing with the gatekeeper as well is I've always found it good if you can friend them up. And this was something with a company I was working with a while back, a few years ago now. They had a very, very hard job of getting past the gatekeeper in this particular deal. And I didn't really, other than the common sense things that we're talking about here. And I thought, I wonder if we start pitching the gatekeeper. So I got them to ring up, introduce themselves, and then start pitching the deal. It was an education software deal. So they were talking to school secretaries. Ideally, they wanted to talk to the head or the bursar at the school. And then this worked a treat. So I don't know how it would sort of transcend into other industries, but the person then would say, oh, no, sorry, I can't deal with that. I just answer the phone here. I'll put you through to, you know, or you need to speak to. But what I was thinking, Wendy, about that was this person, and we've got to remember it is a person, a human being, answers that phone, you know, XYZ school, how many times, hundreds of times a day, but no one wants to speak to them. No one's got anything to say to them other than, can I speak to Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so or whatever, yeah? So I thought by actually friending that person up, asking what their name was, what their role was, and then to start pitching them, would give them, I thought it would just lift their self-esteem a little bit, and they would be more likely to sort of cooperate with us. And it worked in that particular deal.
And I think it would, because in the context of the school secretary, who pretty much knows everything that's going on, is the influencer as to whether it's going to be something that's going to be well received right now as well.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by, you know, I auntie them up, is by befriending them and saying, look, you know, well, do you know if this is something that they'd be looking at, or is it something that they've got? You know, because in some instances it's going to be newly adopted, isn't it? Newly thought of, or innovative for them, and not every school situation is going to be forward thinking enough in certain environments. And it's much the same in business, you know. I always think as well that those gatekeepers, Aunt Mabel, my goodness, have a lovely conversation with them. Sometimes when they answer the phone, if they're laughing at something in the background, you know, before I even say who I am, I'm like, oh, was it a good joke?
Yeah.
And they'll tell you. But, you know, it's like, I don't mind if you would do that in real life, wouldn't you? If you sort of walked into something and they suddenly went quiet, you'd be like, is it me? No, it's just that they feel awkward that they were having a joke when you walked in. So it's just the same as a phone call. But of course, then that conversation, they remember you. So if you've got to follow up, which is a big deal for me, if you're not following up, you can make as many first phone calls as you like. But if you don't follow it up, Aunt Mabel's going to remember you and go, oh yes, hang on a minute, Wendy, let me just put you through. I told him all about it.
The money's in the follow-up, isn't it? That's where the money is, and making yourself, differentiating yourself as that person who jumped in on the joke, got a sense of humor, you said something memorable so that they remember you, and then it anchors, oh, I had a nice chat with Wendy before. No drama about putting you through if Fred's available or not, you know? So that's good. So Wendy, are you currently looking for to sort of take on any new clients for your training programs, or are you fully booked at the moment? How's that look?
Well, fully booked is an odd one. Next couple of weeks I am quite manic, and there's some nice things bubbling away that I'm involved with, and some projects coming through that will reduce my availability of time. But of course, you know, we know that these things take time to set up, get the messaging right. Let's get it all right. So I'm always looking to work with businesses, whether you've got teams going back into the office, whether you've got teams that are furloughed at the moment that need some help getting back into the swing of things if they've had a long break. It can all be managed. Definitely.
Okay, so you're happy. You would invite inquiries that you could start setting the processes up to start working on in a few weeks or in July
Absolutely.
or August. Yeah, fantastic. And how do people get in touch with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. So it's Wendy Harris on LinkedIn under WAG Associates. I've got my website, which is wagassociates.com. I think if you just Google Wendy Harris at WAG, you'll find me everywhere.
And just to explain finally for people the significance of WAG, because I thought it had something to do with footballers' wives and girlfriends, and it hasn't.
No, it's my initials to the name that I was born with. So Wendy Ann Gillette.
Okay, fantastic. So it's Wendy Harris of WAG Associates. Find her on LinkedIn or Google the website and give you a call and have a chat about what you want to do, yeah?
Love having a phone call.
Brilliant. Okay. Wendy, thanks for joining me today. It's been absolutely lovely to do this and to chat with you. And I knew that we'd resonate on so many sort of levels as well. So that's really cool. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Steve. It's been my pleasure.
Cheers, Wendy. Bye.